So it's time to get started with this new project tank. First thing to do is to get some soil substrate layered underneath. I will use sand on top for a more natural looking aesthetic, but this project is all about focusing on one species of plant, so I want to make sure those plants grow really nicely, and for that I'm going to use some normal aquarium soil substrate stuff that I've never used before. Today I've got the Waza Escaper soil, not sponsored, I think it's just what was available to me, and I'm going to, as many people have seen, fill up some mesh filter bags with the soil so it doesn't creep out and get in amongst all the sand, so I can separate it later and reuse the soil with a different type of sand substrate in future projects. I just filled up one to sort of test. Got this nice, I've gone for a really small thin bag. This way I can reuse the bags and keep the soil in the substrate and layer them in different ways. So if I want to go for it built up into one corner of the tank, or all the way across the back, or sort of one island or either end of the tank, I can move them and reuse them for everything rather than one or two larger bags, which doesn't give me so much option to do. So I've got 3 bags in a row, or 3 sets of 3 bags in a row, so 9 bags in a row, gently sloped to the back, so I'll get a nice slope front to back to give a bit of depth. It'll also give a nice deep layer for the roots of the Nymphaea lotus that I'm going to be planting in here. I'm just going to put a couple bags at the front here as well, because I'm going to have a few lotuses at the front too, just to, it's going to be just all lotus, not really any hardscape, so I'm going to be planting throughout, but I want that slope still. So a couple bags more in the front to fill, and then I think so get the sand on top. So something I've done on purpose is I've left a little gap here just so I don't see any of the bags when viewing from this side of the tank. I want to be able to view it from both sides, so I really don't want. So sand the substrates in, got quite a steep slope. That's to give a bit of height at the back. The lilies will help with that. The red tiger lotus will be, well, they'll grow to the surface quite happily. So I'll have a lot going on, but I wanted that deep substrate at the back there just to really help them root in and get a really nice healthy plant growth. So next is get it filled with water and get the filter running. So yeah. That's it. Not going to be planting now because I'm going to try a dark start. It's my first time using a plant substrate. They often release a bit of ammonia and nitrogen wastes upon sort of filling, so to prevent algae build up and plants not doing quite so well. I'm not injecting CO2 or anything, they're not going to be growing that quickly. No fast growing plants. I want a dark start, let all of that leach out into the water, mature the filter media, which I'm going to use some mature media anyway, just to process all that ammonia quickly, drain out all the water, plant it and fill it back up. Hopefully that will reduce the amount of algae problems I get. I'm doing quite a quick turnaround project, so I want it looking good and growing well from the start. I don't want to go through a battling phase with algae, and even though you get better growth when you put all of that there, you get better growth of algae, so it's that balance. So yeah. That's it. I've gone for quite a sort of golden, yellowy sand rather than a white sand. I think it's more natural from the pictures I've saw. I've not managed to find many underwater photos, but the banks of the rivers and where the meanders are depositing the sands, I'm noticing they look a bit more yellow than white. They definitely aren't dark, so this is why I've chosen that colour of sand. Also, it's got this sort of slight dark fleck in the substrate here. It's quite a nice little, it's not just a plain colour, which is what I wanted. I wanted some substance. I'm going to add a bit of a larger grain size across the top in some places as well. It's also going to have twigs and some small botanicals potentially, scattered across the surface, so it won't be quite such a vast array of sand. But if you look in the habitats, as this size area is 60 by 30, more than likely could just be sand. So yeah, natural, but a bit boring, so I'm gonna add to it. So I've just been doing a water change on some tanks downstairs, and I'm gonna bring the water up and start filling this tank up with some mature water. Rather than chuck it down the drain and fill this up with tap, I may as well reuse it. It's not going to add many bacteria across. I'm going to move some mature filter media for that, but it just saves water. So yeah, time to fill it up. So, all nice and filled now, and it's time to get the filter filled up and get some mature media in there and get it running. So, yeah, let's start with that. So, I've just popped down to the fish room and I've got a bucket of tank water. I've squeezed some filter foams from another planted tank that I've got in the water. So, that's got lots of basic detritus breaking down whatever waste, and I've taken some of the plastic media from my sump. It's not the best of medias, but it will have a coating of biofilms and stuff on it, and I'm going to pop that in just to seed the new filter, because there's no fish in it. I don't mind if ammonia builds up from the soil substrate that I've used. So what I'm doing is a dark start, so I'm going to keep the tank dark for a few weeks, just to make sure that the algae levels don't build up too much. This plant, the red tiger lotus, is a very slow growing plant. I don't want to put it in there with all that waste and not much plant growth and plant matter, because it will just get covered in algae with the bright light and the nutrients available. So I can dark start, I can leach out a lot of that nutrients into the water. That will seed the small amount of bacteria that I'm starting off with, grow that up to a decent colony before I put fish in. Then I can drain this water out, get rid of all of that really high nutrient water and fill it back up. And then I can get going with planting and getting fish in pretty quickly afterwards, because it should all be mature. That's the plan anyway, we'll see how it works. So yeah, let's unbox the filter and get this all in. Notice that I've kept the plastic media in the water, keep it damp, keep it wet, make sure the bacteria doesn't, whatever bacteria is on there doesn't die. So, filter's all running now. I didn't record it all because, well, we've all seen the setup of a filter and it's boring. But there you go, nice stainless pipe in the back corner, and then just opto-white glass. Water's tinted slightly and murky because it's got filter squeezed out in it, and it's from a tank that has slight tannins. But that will all be taken out before I start planting. And the filter is just down there. It looks so small in this cabinet, but I didn't need to justify a big Biomaster filter or anything, just a small one. All I wanted was to make sure that the the actual heater was out of the tank, so it looked nice. So the filter spout thermos are much cheaper and smaller, and yeah, do the same job. They just don't have the pre-filter. But because I'm going to be taking this tank down every sort of few months or so and rescaping it, I can give the inside of the filter a clean at that point, and the sort of pre-filter I don't need that polishing of the water for my style of aquariums. So yeah, now to turn the lights off and leave it be for a while. It's been a few weeks since I started, well, set this tank up, got water in there, seeded the filter with mature media. So now it's time, hopefully a lot of the waste, or not waste, plant food really, but yeah, ammonia and stuff from the substrate, the soil substrate, should have leached out, or at least a significant part of it. So I'm going to drain this water out, add some botanicals, add some tiger lotus lilies, and then fill it back up. I'm going to fill it back up with mature water again. So I've got a bucket of water I've just taken out of my Borneo inspired tank. It's up to temperature, so there won't be any shock to the bacteria. So there's no chlorine in it. There's a little bit of a tint, but it's not such an issue. But yeah, the main thing is mature water just keeps any bacteria that I've fostered going, rather than chucking in cold or room temperature. I can mix it, whatever, but basically, yeah, don't want to put fresh water straight into the tank and mess up what I've been doing. So yeah, gonna get started with that. So gonna put the lights on so it's a bit easier for you guys to see, and then so lights on, nice bright tank, and I'll turn the filter off. I'm going to be draining this tank out completely, so don't want any electrical, so filter, heater turned on. So I'll turn that off, the humming stopped, and it's time to drain the tank. Time lapse time. So, tank's now drained. Actually, it's quite cool. Even though yesterday I wiped off the glass and got rid of any biofilms that were growing because it was starting to look a bit cloudy, they're back. That's how quickly they can colonise surfaces, and it's really incredible. And part of the reason why I just find botanical method aquariums fascinating. So let me just grab the camera. I don't know if you can see it with this light, but there's biofilm. Oh, there we go. Biofilm all over that surface. Look at that. That's 1 day's growth. Absolutely incredible. I've actually left it on the glass so that the bacteria and life there colonizes the botanicals I put in, the new water. It's just extra sort of bacteria and life to keep in the tank. And now the tank's drained, you can actually see this faded background. So I'm trying it out for a friend. They're looking at trying to sort of do coloured backgrounds with this transition from a dark up to light. As an alternative for people who can't afford the light grounds, but don't want a solid black background, but also don't want the sort of picturesque rocks, bright blue water sort of thing. So this is their sort of black water biotype version. And you can see it goes from quite a nice dark brown near the sand up to a nice light, almost white at the top. Unfortunately, this version is a hard board, which you stick to the back, but the reflection from the glass means when it's filled with water, it's quite difficult to see in a camera. When the lights are off and you've just got room lighting, you can see it really nicely, but yeah, it's just not quite right. There's a stick-on vinyl, which I've actually got as well for a planted tank. It's going to be sort of fades of greeny blues. So I'm going to try that for one of the other scapes that I'm going to do, and that hopefully will, because you don't get the gap between the board and the glass, you should see it a bit better. So yeah, if it becomes something you can actually buy, I'll tag them in some of the videos, but for now, just yeah, I quite like the effect. So yeah, anyway, I've left a tiny bit of water in there. I can't really get it all out. There's no need really. Fish aren't going in today. I'm going to plant up, get some botanicals, let the botanicals get covered in biofilms, let that bloom go, because that's going to have a really high biological oxygen demand. That with sort of new unstable conditions, not going to be good for fish. But with it being a mature filter now, seeded with bacteria, it shouldn't take long. I've got a few of the fish ready downstairs in another tank that should going to come up here temporarily. I need to get a few more. I've only got 4, but I want a few more. But I've got the lotuses, I've got botanicals, so I'm going to add those in, and yeah, exciting stuff. So I just dropped in some twigs and locally collected leaves. All of this just came from the UK countryside. Then it's just time to pop the lilies in. So this one here has actually got 2 bulbs, so hopefully the second one will sprout soon. But it's got a nice established root system, and I'll just pop this in away from the other larger established lily, just so they're a bit spread out. I've got a few other smaller ones as well, which I'll add, but I'm not going to film all of it. It's all done. Filter's back on, heater's back on, water's moving around. It's quite nice and murky. I've disturbed all the biofilm that was growing on the sand and on the glass where I've touched it. So I'll do some close-ups of the lilies and botanicals when it's all settled down and filtered out. Although it looks quite natural. It wasn't the idea, so I'll wait till it's looking a bit better. Maybe when the lilies have grown in a bit. So yeah, awesome. Let's wait and see how it turns out. So I'll actually add the close-ups of the botanicals and the lilies as a short sometime soon.